This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Today our special guest is Tony Alvarez. Tony is very familiar to our audience. He's been a friend since we first met somewhere around 2003 or so. Tony buys properties to mostly hold with an occasional flip mixed in, and now he's doing it in a couple of states. So Tony, welcome back to our show.
Thank you very much, Bruce. It's a pleasure to be back with you after being kind of on hiatus from speaking and all that. Thank you.
Yeah, when did you take a break? What year was that?
You know, that was right after the last Millionaire Maker show. I'm not sure of the year, but you would know, I think. No?
Yeah, probably 2015, something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to our first meeting. And that, what's interesting about that, you just happened to be in an audience. I was speaking at the Apartment Owners Association. Was that correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have been checking you out a little bit because I had heard that you spoke on timing and stuff like that, and that was really the only reason that I went there that day. If not, I would have never attended anything, Apartment Owners, anything. But I went there to listen to you speak, and as you well know, there was a crucial moment where someone in the audience asked you, and these are mostly apartment guys. The guy asked you, "Hey, you've been talking about about the market, single families, and all this is going to change. But I'm an apartment owner. How's that going to affect me?" And I was standing there smiling, thinking, "Okay, let's see what you're going to do now," And you kind of chuckled to yourself a little bit, and you stepped back a second, and you answered the guy. You said, I'm really not sure about that." And and the whole place kind of laughed a little bit, because it took the pressure off. Because that question being asked, you could have said anything. Somebody else might have said, probably the same thing. Next question, anybody else, and just blew it off. But you stood there and you told them the truth. And I was impressed with that about you, and our relationship began because I went to the back and waited for you, as you well know, and we became friends. But I appreciated the fact because I knew in that moment the kind of person that you were.
That was just think about all the things that wouldn't have happened. I thought about that today, and this is kind of why I opened with it. Okay, because there was a sequence that happened after that may never have happened. You wouldn't, first of all, ever been introduced to an industry that really embraced you. And so, you start, it's like it's almost like you're peeling an onion back to how it started. And then you think, wow, going forward, none of that would have occurred. That's interesting. There was a time where I learned, it's called looping, pretending you know something when you don't.
Exactly, yeah.
I was trying to get into Corona Industrial Electric to sell them their parts, and they were pretty established business, but I didn't know that the owner was the mayor of Corona and was an Auschwitz survivor. And wow. When I asked her if I could quote their work, she rolled this big set of plans across the table to me. She says, "Well, take a look at that and give me a quote on the switchgear." Well, you need an engineering degree to do that. And I said, "Mrs. Spiegel," I said, there's no way you would want to trust the number I come up with. I don't have experience enough to do that." And she looked at me. She said, "Young man, I'm so glad you said that." She said, "I can work with you." And I never forgot that lesson. And it just so happened that she passed away, and I was speaking a couple days later in front of the Corona Real Estate Group. Her son was there, and I got to tell him that story about how his mom affected my entire life of never pretending that I know something again.
Yeah, and that's. I was just speaking with someone before we started the call, and they had asked me, what's most important for me when I create a friendship. either a business friendship or on a personal level, and to a certain extent, they're very similar for me. And why don't you tell me what you think it is? Well, let me see. Maybe loyalty. And I said, well, but yeah, that's true. But to me, the number one is honesty. Because if you don't have that, I mean, you could be business friends, you could be this, you could be that, but because I want to be able to, I want to be able to get from somebody. I want to get to the bottom line. I want to get to the bottom line as fast as I can. And then if someone is willing to do that, then there's nothing you can't develop with that person.
That's right. You don't want to have to hear something and say, okay, should I divide that by 2? Because it's usually an exaggeration or something's withheld. It's like partial. That does drive me crazy. And you're right. It has long range implications where you just put somebody in a certain category, and it's very hard to escape it. It really is.
Well, most of the stuff, and as a matter of fact, this person who was asked, they landed on respect really as being of the most importance, and I don't know, that wasn't even in my first couple. My second one is actually loyalty, to be honest. But those are the only. And then I said, "There's no third." Okay, just so you know, if we can't get beyond those 2, we're in trouble. But most of the folks that I've met in business or otherwise that have found themselves in trouble over their life has been as a result of their inability to be honest, not only with other people but primarily with themselves, in analyzing what they're doing, what they're about to do, who they get involved with, what their own capabilities are. It's a real dilemma. It could become a real can of worms for someone, because that then extends to if you're willing to ignore things about yourself, then you will do the same thing about others, and your mind will convince you that you can get involved with people that are of not good character because it won't happen to you, or you can overlook it, or you can make it better. Most every problem stems from that kind of nonsense.
I don't like it when it's almost done on my behalf. They're doing something that they think, okay, I'm going to endear myself to this guy, so they do, they cross a line, and I just go, okay, well, this is what I know about you. It'll be my turn someday.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there can't be any loyalty there, and loyalty is when someone's really watching out for you. Basically, I don't know how other people interpret it, but when someone tells you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it, or regardless of what could happen as a result.
Exactly.
Of that to me is someone who's loyal, not somebody who's going to carry out your orders regardless of whether they're worth carrying out or not. That's the kind of loyalty I don't really want to have anything to do with.
We haven't had many chances to have applications for jobs, but a long time ago when we hired Vicky, there was a question on the application, and it was regarding that if I ask you to do this thing on my behalf and it's not honest, what will you do? And everyone else answered, we'll do it.
Yeah, because that's going to get me the job, right?
Exactly. And Vicky was going, I won't do it. And I was like, yay. That's funny, huh?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's very cool.
When we first got together, I mean, you had this list of properties. It was pretty detailed, and I was impressed because I had, I'm actually not like that to this day. But, I mean, you knew where...
Yeah, and I've never changed. So
yeah, you knew where every cent was going and what you paid and how much rent, and it was pretty detailed. And I was like, holy cow, this guy's serious. And I think what was interesting is... the only time in my life I had anything to do with the area of where Lancaster was Rosamond. So, I mean, if we had that discussion probably any other time, I wouldn't have had a list of reasons of why you shouldn't do what you're about to do, because I'm holding off for the very reasons you're about to sell, which is interesting. Right. And so that was fun, being able to look at your list of properties and know with some certainty that, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't sell those things.
Yeah, and I was actually somewhat disappointed at the moment because I wanted to bail out faster than anything else. I felt like a guy who was in a boat that was ready to sink. You know, it goes to show you how when you don't really understand your market and you don't understand the bigger picture. Because I was even back then, I really did not have a good grasp on the, you know, when to get in and when to get out of a market. I just dealt with my inventory and that was it, you know.
Well, part of it is too, you were, you know, when you started that journey, I mean, you had come off of a really bad situation and now you had created, you were broke. And now you created yourself a multi-million-dollar net worth and you could literally be done even if you had sold it early.
Yeah, and you know, people never believe me, and I know they don't by the look on their face, when I tell them I had no clue how much money I had actually amassed, you know, in property values, because I wasn't watching the market. I was paying attention every day to what I did. I got better and better at what I did, and my goal was to get to $1 million, you know, in profits by, you know, holding on to only 10 properties that I would pay off, and they would each be worth $100,000. Now these are houses I was buying for $30,000, you know,
right? Yeah,
and and all of that, and then you know, by focusing on what I did and getting better and better and better, and just hyper focusing on my present, you know, on the day and every day, going out and doing and loving it. I love what I do. I learned to love what I did, you know, and then when I put my head up, it was, you know, $7.2 million in equity. Now, I'm not talking in values. You know, real estate people always talk about, oh, I sold so much, agents, and you know, none of that. It was the bottom line, and I kept doing the numbers over and over and over again because I thought, you know, I'm not that good at math. So
this can't be right.
Maybe it's just 700,000, you know. But yeah, and then of course I was desperate to get out because I would have dreams about an earthquake happening because we're all on the San Andreas Fault out there, and I thought I had a dream that that earthquake was going to happen. All my houses were going to give in and kill all my tenants, and I was going to lose everything.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and I was really acting out of fear, and that's another thing that I learned that you actually taught me by saying, you know, you need to hang on. You gave me 10 words of advice, and you did that little laughing thing that you did on stage, and I never forget it. And I remember it like it just happened, you know. You did that little laughing thing, and the minute you did that, you brought me back in that moment to when you were on stage, and I knew this guy's about to tell me the bottom line, you know. And you said, it was something like, I think you need to stay just a little bit longer. I counted it at the time, and it was 10 words of advice. and I went home that day reluctantly because I really didn't want to do it, but I changed my whole plan, and I decided to wait. And you called me three years later, and you said, we were having a conversation, you said, okay, dump it. The first thing, and now I'm watching the numbers, right, because now I've learned, and I was up another $3 million, and I said, wait, can I just hang on? What about another 6 months?
Well, that's one that I remember one email from you, and it was, okay, when do you think the peak month will be? And I like, Tony, you own so much, you probably affects it when you do it. So you got to do it gradually. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. But you actually, you know, and it's right what you said, you know, when we started speaking. And I'm a believer. Over the years, you know, I'm 61 now, and I've become really kind of convinced that everyone has a message for us if we're paying attention. We catch it, and if we're not, you know, if we're in our own minds thinking we're just looking to confirm our own ideas, then we miss life as it's been laid out for us, you know. So you had a great message for me, and which, you know, that was the beginning of a wonderful relationship and friendship with you because, as you mentioned, you went on to introduce me to the market as a speaker. And I have to tell you honestly, for all the times that I spoke in front of an audience, I don't feel I ever did as good a job as the very first time that you introduced me to an audience at the very first Millionaire Maker, and I'll tell you why. Because back then, it's just like when I was first doing, you know, buying and selling or buying and fixing. You know, when I was broke and I was coming out, I was very humble. And the very first time I spoke, I think I was never as humble as that time. I was very grateful to even be on that stage, speaking to anybody about anything that I had learned. You know, I mean, who the hell am I? You know, but you had faith in me. You said, get out there. And I remember being petrified,
right up to the last minute, and I was thinking, you're crazy. You got me going out there, and all these people that really, it was Jim Rohn, and I was like, my God, what am I doing here, And you said to me before I walked in, just a few words again, and you said, are you going to lie to anybody here today? And that shook it right out of me. I said, why do you say that? He said, well, just get out there, tell them what you did, and get the hell off the stage. Basically, get off the stage, because I've never heard you swear, actually. And
That's funny.
and I got out there, and the fears went away, and I had the best day of my life next to my son being born, honestly. And so I've learned since that time too that we forget to be humble. We forget to be grateful for whatever comes our way, regardless of whether it's real estate profits or whether it's a chance to speak to a group of people that really want to hear what you have to say or are curious, So
that was really a cool day to witness too, to be honest with you, because there were skilled people that all, during that whole event, you were the only person they lined up to hug. That was awesome. It was just awesome.
And I think, in retrospect, when I look at that, I have to tell you, when I ended the talk, I realized that I was very much in the audience as much as they were. I heard every word I said as if I was an attendee, which made me feel, without making this sound esoteric or anything, it made me feel that the stuff that flew through me, I didn't have to think about. It came from my heart, and it came from my personal life experience. And, when you end up broke, and it happens to you more than once, you think you're a career moron.
Okay.
You think, okay, I can do the two-step dance, but in the end, I'm going to fall after I trip on somebody's foot, okay? And then having been able to meet people like yourself, because I know as well as anyone who's ever followed your advice, that if it wasn't for you, Tony Alvarez would have ended up, either selling his stuff prematurely and then trying to figure out what the hell to do with his money, or crashing and burning again, because the market would have caught me off guard. So, when you realize that, you realize how interdependent we are. We all seek independence. And then some people choose to be dependent. But in the end, the only thing is realizing that you're interdependent. We all rely on each other. You love to do stuff that I hate. I don't want to read all that stuff. This year I sat at the event that you had on timing, and I was astounded. I never felt as good, and I realized, what, I've been in my cave. I need to come out of my cave. I had such a wonderful time. I'm listening to information, being around people that are just wonderful, because you attract a really good crowd of folks. And yeah, we all need each other to a certain extent, no matter how. That's why I always, once I discovered you and the loans and I gave the Norris Group my business as long as I possibly could. It didn't matter to me about anything else, because I wanted to support those that support me.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
How do you pay back a guy? How do you pay back a guy who makes you $10 million with 10 words?
Well, you know what? I get paid back if you want to put it in that terms. I mean, just standing in front, talk about being humbled. We knew that event would sell out because people have supported that research, and you're standing in front of an audience of people that are, some of them are extremely wealthy. They're just the cream of the crop. It's the best audience probably that meets in our industry. It really is. And to have people's attention for 8 hours, yeah, that's humbling for the same reason. I can think back to being fired 5 times in a row and sitting in my car eating lunch, looking at want ads, because I knew I had a shelf life of between 3 and 6 months before they found out who they had. That's a pretty rough way to look at yourself. But I want to just talk about Lancaster one more time. When you chose to sell, what type of market was it to sell in? Was it? It
was crazy. It was crazy. To be honest with you, as I said, I sold because you basically said, okay, this is the time. And I'll tell you how right you were. Okay, I had built 2 houses at the end of the market because I had bought this lot that ended up being 2 lots, and I had gotten it for peanuts. I paid $15,000 or much earlier in the market, and I got this floor plan. And anyways, I built these 2 little. It was a flag lot. I built 2 houses. One I put it on the market. One sells for $410,000. Now this is an 1,800 square foot, 1-story house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Nothing spectacular. I mean, it's an average construction, comp shingle roof. Sold for $410,000. So I go to list the other house.
Yeah.
It took me an act of God to get rid of it for $396. Okay. I couldn't. There were no. The market had already started to change, and there was no takers for it.
Yeah, it's like they rang a bell.
Yeah, and you had, and in the last conversation that you and I had, when we were talking, and you said, you want to start getting rid of your stuff. And I had tried to argue with you about it, like, what about, I'm watching prices go up like $25,000 a week, and that wasn't an exaggeration. It was crazy. I mean, I sold houses to people that turn around and sold them like a few months later, and some of them made it in time, actually made money. But a lot of them, crashed and burned.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that you said, Tony, there's a question that you asked me that really woke me up, and you said, Tony, do you want to sell your stuff to a euphoric, and you use that term, to a euphoric market when everybody wants it, or do you want to sell your stuff? You want to try selling your stuff when nobody wants it? And in that question, you took me out of my nonsense, and you brought me back to just before I went bankrupt the last time. And I said to you, okay, thanks. And I hung up the phone, and I immediately started selling stuff, So it was like a slap across the face,
Sometimes, and it probably took me back to my stock experience, where in about, I don't know, something like under 2 months, I turned 250 into 850 and then down to 100. Of course, I didn't sell it until it was 100. And I guess that was pretty fresh memory, That was a bummer where you couldn't possibly sell it at 850 because there was a day actually with that portfolio I had made $100,000 in a day, and you get used to that, and you also pat yourself on the back and say, gosh, I am really good at this too. And then you find out in Lancaster, man, it had its day, and then when its day was over, wow. It changed so fast.
It was like a nuclear dirty bomb or something went off, and nobody wanted to touch the place.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in Oregon. I had bought myself a beautiful house. I was sitting in Oregon, and I was sitting there like one of those fat cats that's got a mouse in his mouth or something, or a bird, I felt like, and I was watching, and I was looking down the hill at everyone's suffering, I almost felt guilty, and I thought, oh my God, there, but for the grace of God or Bruce Norris's advice, there goes Tony.
Well, I feel the same way about the research for myself, because it took me away from guessing and listening to other people. I mean, that's what I hated, because, in '89, when I kind of blew it and, started a big project, it was completely due to momentum that was at the time. And it was, it just had nothing to do with a chart. It had to do with feelings. And I really learned my lesson that can be
Bruce,
very bad.
Everybody in my market, every real estate agent, by the way, that I respected, all the investors. I mean, I knew an investor that had over 300 houses, and he asked me to come to his office. He's a guy I taught how to do do Section 8, and he sat with me. And after he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "No, I'm dumping everything." And he called me an idiot. He laughed, and his wife was in the other room. She came in. She goes, "You better listen to Tony because he listens to people." But I was trying to convince him.
Tony, we got to.
I know this.
We got to end this segment right now. Let's pick this up when we get back. Tony, thanks for joining us.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.